Welcome to the Recipients of Honor YouTube channel. This channel is dedicated to telling the stories of Medal of Honor recipients. This is the story of the 1st Air Force Medal of Honor recipient, Major Bernard F. Fisher. Fisher's story begins in 1927 when he was born on January 11th in San Bernardino, California. Fisher would call Clearfield, Utah his home, as he had been raised and attended school primarily in Utah. Fisher had always been interested in airplanes as a young boy. He built model airplanes that flew, but it was when a member of his church offered Fisher a ride in a J-3 Cub he found his true passion for flying. Fisher remarked it as the greatest thing he experienced. Towards the end of World War II, Fisher had served in the Navy for a brief time. After about a year of service and with the end of World War II, Fisher continued his education at Boise State Junior College in 1947. It was also in 1947 that Fisher would join the Idaho Air National Guard. 2 years later, in 1949, Fisher transferred to the University of Utah. Before he received his undergraduate degree, he would join the Air Force in 1951. Fisher attended pilot training and went on to work in the Air Defense Command as a fighter jet pilot. He was with the Air Defense Command until 1965, when Fisher and 4 other of his squadron members volunteered for service in the Vietnam War. He became a member of the 1st Air Commando Squadron, located at the Pleiku Air Base in South Vietnam. Fisher would go on to complete about 200 combat sorties starting in July of 1965 and spanning to June of 1966. All his flights were completed in the A-1EH Sky Raider. It would be a particular sortie in his Sky Raider where he would act courageously and earn the Medal of Honor. March 10, 1966. Fisher was flying with another squad member on a routine bombing and strafing mission to Kon Tum. While flying, they were alerted about a U.S. Special Forces camp that was overrun by North Vietnamese troops and diverted to the A Shau Valley region near the border of Laos and Vietnam. Fisher and his wingmate arrived at the camp and met with 2 other Sky Raiders. There was heavy cloud cover over the camp, and to make the approach even more dangerous, North Vietnamese anti-aircraft guns surrounded the area. Fisher was able to spot a break in the clouds, and the 4 Sky Raiders descended through the hole into the A Shau area. Fisher switched his radio to FM and communicated with the U.S. troops on the ground. He was told that there were 3 mortar bunkers that belonged to the South Vietnamese and American friendlies, and that the 4 Sky Raiders could hit anything except those mortar bunkers. The 4 Sky Raiders then strafed the area with their cannons and began a hail of fire upon the camp. Fellow pilot Major Dafford Wayne Myers went down to strafe on the camp and was hit before he could ascend back up. Myers' plane caught fire, and he was forced to crash land on the airstrip in the camp. His plane skidded for about 800 feet before crashing and erupting into flames. Fisher watched from the sky and called into the command post that there was a pilot down and most likely killed. Miraculously, Fisher saw Myers escape from the flames and jump into a ditch. Fisher then quickly called back to the command post and said they needed some help and a helicopter for rescue. He was told that a helicopter would be on the way, so he would join the fight while Myers waited in the ditch, taking cover from North Vietnamese troops. After 10 minutes, there was still no helicopter, and the camp was almost fully taken over by the North Vietnamese. Fisher understood that it was time to take action and save Myers himself, as waiting was no longer an option. He decided he would land a Sky Raider on the runway of the camp despite the runway being riddled with debris and surrounded by the enemy. His fellow Sky Raiders would continue the strafe and provide cover fire. He called into the command post to let them know about his plan, and they let him know the runway's length was 3,500 feet. Fisher felt some relief because he was able to confidently land the plane on a runway of 3,000 feet. Although, the command post had told him an inaccurate length, and the runway was actually 2,500 feet. He still decided that it was necessary and the only option to land in order to save Myers. Descending through smoke from the fire of the camp, Fisher touched down at 95 miles per hour. His Skyraider skidded and skidded on and off the runway as Fisher slammed the brakes and attempted to control the plane. The end of the runway quickly approached, and he realized he wasn't going to be able to stop in time. His brakes were red hot, but had only sustained damage to the right wing and tail section. He was able to turn the plane around and taxied about 800 feet back up the runway when Myers hopped out of the ditch waving his hands. Fisher waited as Myers made a dash towards his plane. The North Vietnamese began shooting at Fisher's plane while he waited and Myers was knocked down. Fisher watched and without hesitation locked the brakes of the plane and jumped out to go help Myers, still under fire from the North Vietnamese. He felt compelled to help his fellow pilot. He dodged the debris and fire and was able to pick Myers up and pull him into the cockpit of the plane. They didn't have time to strap in. Fisher whipped the plane around, gave full throttle, and took off. The plane ascended quickly, and they were able to make it out, despite the heavy fire it had endured. Because of Fisher's heroic actions, Major Dafford Myers would survive that day. There is an astonishing coincidence about the day. During World War II, on August 2, 1944, a P-38 pilot by the name of Captain Richard Wilsey was flying near Romania when his plane was damaged by anti-aircraft flak. He was forced to crash land due to his failing engines and was rescued by fellow P-38 pilot Flight Officer Richard Andrews. Andrews would land, pick up Wilsey, and load him back into the cockpit, near the same manner that Fisher had done for Myers. It is an amazing coincidence that both Wilsey and Andrews would later be involved in the events of Fisher's rescue. Wilsey was the commanding officer of Myers' squadron, the 602nd Air Commando. Andrew was flying with Fisher and was one of the Sky Raiders that provided covering fire for the entire mission. On January 19th of 1967, Fisher would be awarded the Medal of Honor by President Lyndon B. Johnson. His citation read, "For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty." On that date, the Special Forces camp at A Shau was under attack by 2,000 North Vietnamese Army regulars. Hostile troops had positioned themselves between the airstrip and the camp. Other hostile troops had surrounded the camp and were continuously raking it with automatic weapons fire from the surrounding hills. The tops of the 1,500-foot hills were obscured by an 800-foot ceiling, limiting aircraft maneuverability and forcing pilots to operate within range of hostile gun positions, which often were able to fire down on attacking aircraft. During the battle, Major Fisher observed a fellow airman crash land on the battle-torn airstrip. In the belief that the downed pilot was seriously injured and in imminent danger of capture, Major Fisher announced his intention to land on the airstrip to effect a rescue. Although aware of the extreme danger and likely failure of such an attempt, he elected to continue. Directing his own air cover, he landed his aircraft and taxied almost the full length of the runway, which was littered with the battle debris and parts of an exploded aircraft. While effecting a successful rescue of the downed pilot, heavy ground fire was observed, with 19 bullets striking his aircraft. In the face of withering ground fire, he applied power and gained enough speed to lift off at the overrun of the airstrip. Major Fisher's profound concern for his fellow airmen at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty are in the highest traditions of the U.S. Air Force and reflect great credit upon himself and the armed forces of this country. Fisher would become the first member of the Air Force to earn the Medal of Honor. Fisher continued his service and worked at the Air Defense Command, flying jet interceptors in West Germany with the 496th Fighter Interceptor Squadron and the 525th Fighter Interceptor Squadron. In October of 1969, he would become the operations officer with the 87th Fighter Interceptor Squadron, located at the Duluth International Airport until 1971. In June of 1971, Fisher took on the role of Senior Air Force Advisor for the 25th Air Division at Gowan Air National Guard Base, located in Boise, Idaho. He served in this position until his retirement from the Air Force on June 30th of 1974 as a colonel. He would live with his wife Riala in Kuna, Idaho until her death on April 27, 2008. May 3rd of 2008, Fisher finally received his diploma from the University of Utah and was recognized for his military achievement and academic achievements. He died on August 16, 2014 at the age of 87. He is buried at Idaho State Veterans Cemetery in Boise, Idaho. Fisher is honored by the namesake of two parks, the Colonel Bernard Fisher Veterans Memorial Park in Kuna, Idaho, and Fisher Park in Clearfield, Utah. He is also the namesake for a portion of Utah State Route 193, which passes near Hill Air Force Base, and for a room located at the 353rd Special Operations Group, Kadena Air Force Base, Japan. In addition, a military sealift command vessel was named the MV Major Bernard F. Fisher in 1999. In 2010, a homeless veteran transitional living program was started by the Boise Rescue Mission. Fisher's famous quote, "When a man is down, you don't leave him there," is their motto. Fisher's Sky Raider is also on display at the National Museum of the United States Air Force at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. Major Bernard Fisher would become the first Air Force Medal of Honor recipient for his courage, commitment, and actions to save his fellow comrade. Thanks for watching.